Welcome to another edition of the SprintCarUnlimited.com Deep Dive presented by EnTrust IT Solutions. Joining us on this week's show is promoter and K&K Insurance guru, Steve Sinclair. Before we get to Steve, don't forget to check out EnTrust IT Solutions. EnTrust is a full-service technology company serving small and mid-sized businesses in New York, Pennsylvania, and surrounding areas. The staff at EnTrust takes a personalized approach to technology. See why customers are choosing EnTrust IT Solutions as their technology partner by scheduling a free consultation at www.entrust-msp.com or by calling 717-292-8868. Now here's Steve. Steve, welcome to the Deep Dive.
Hey, glad to be here. Thank you.
No problem. You're looking a little crisp. I understand you're in Florida. You're not in Wisconsin. Is this GQ, Steve Sinclair, or what's going on?
We had a TBA on the schedule for this weekend all along, and as I really couldn't find a good fit for it, so took it off. We have a place in St. Augustine, Florida that we haven't been to since March. We need to check on, so here we are.
All right. Well, I'm glad you were able to take some time out. I know you're busy. But I wanted to jump in. You've been around a long time. You're 64. You're involved in insurance, IRA, you name it. You've probably done it. So, Steve, when did you first get involved in dirt track racing and specifically sprint car racing in general?
Well, I grew up in a racing family. My dad was the local drag racing champ. When I was born. And then he was in the engines pretty heavy, and he built engines for lots of different kind of cars when I was growing up. We always had race cars in our family garage. He had road racing cars. We had Cobras and Shelby Mustangs, and we ran the Trans Am series back in its heyday, from like 68 to 72, with a car out of the family garage, and then started working on some midgets and sprint cars, and I got hooked on those, and I was a crew guy on Frank Filsco, which was a local Chicago area sprint car guy, who unfortunately was actually killed at a World of Outlaw race in Hartford, Michigan in 1996. But so I crewed for him, and I became IRA president actually while I was crewing for him in 1993. So I've been running IRA since 93.
So IRA.
Yes.
When did that start? And as president, when that started, what was the purpose of starting that series there? Was it just to give kind of the Wisconsin and Midwest area a series similar to what the All-Stars were at the time?
A smaller version, yes. So IRA was started in 1966, actually. And they always had monthly membership meetings. It was a club per se,
right? And
it was a club when I took it over, and then they never really traveled much side. Maybe they go to Santa Fe Speedway in Illinois, and 3 or 4 other tracks in Wisconsin, but Wilmot was the base. And then when I got involved, I kind of thought, well, maybe we should not just be locked into one track. So we started hitting other places and going to other states. And it just kind of evolved. And then eventually the IRS didn't like the way we were doing things. So we incorporated, and here we are today. So, I mean, it's, there's no more monthly meetings, it's just kind of our deal. And the guys have been very supportive of me in this time. And we've got a pretty good staff. And, I've got another family that helps me out with, they play the role of secretary treasurer, I guess, and things like that. But and they're, owners in the corporation like myself.
And then the insurance game. When did you get into, because you work for K&K, when did you get into insurance? And what made you, for God's sake, why?
The what made you is the question. So, okay, so I was part of SLS Promotions with Scott Boyd and Larry Hillerud.
Yep.
And we were promoting numerous World of Outlaw events. Back when the Gum Out series was going, we did almost all of those. And we started getting our feet wet and going to different states and promoting races and, places outside of Wisconsin. So when we did SLS and we were doing Manzanita and Houston and hell, we were even up in Edmonton, Canada doing stuff. The Dakotas, a lot of places we necessarily shouldn't have been. And the year of the split with NST and the Outlaws was not financially a good one for us and for me in particular. I'm just a regular guy, and that was my full-time gig. Where the other two guys had other businesses, and now I would be the one that would go into town, a few days early and number the seats and do all that stuff and sell the tickets in advance and all that. And the year of the split was tough. We were on the World of Outlaws side, obviously, because my partner was Scott Boyd, and he owned the Caravan #7 that Craig Delansky drove. So my decision was somewhat made for me, but as it turned out, it was the right decision. So our last race in whatever year that was, I forget, it was 2006, sounds about right. We did it at Hollywood Hills, New Mexico. And Ted Johnson was still around. He said, he kind of sold us on that. And we went in there blind. And, we didn't know anything about the area. And Oscar De La Hoya was fighting. He's a local, and he's fighting on closed circuit TV in every casino in the state the same night that we're trying to run a race. Then we got a windstorm kicked in. My wife's selling tickets. There was no hiding it. We took a beating on that one. And I knew I couldn't sit all winter because I lost everything I had made. We lost on that night. So I knew that I couldn't just sit around and do nothing all winter and wait for next season. So I went to the RPM workshops in Reno, and Larry Rice was my insurance guy for IRA. So he always told me that I'd be a good fit. Knowing racing would be a good thing for an insurance guy. So I went to every insurance company there until I found one a new one called Topic at the time, Topic Insurance, that didn't really know anything about racing, but they were trying to get on board. So they hired me immediately and I got my license and spent a year there. I spent 2 years with another outfit that was insuring ASA at the time, got a bunch of accounts, met a lot of people. And then when Larry Rice got sick, he worked it out where I got his job in his territory. So I've been with K&K since 2010.
So there's a lot to ask you. I mean, start with the insurance and what you can tell me, obviously. What is the biggest misconception that you hear from fans and drivers? What is something they don't understand about insurance that you notice is one of the biggest things they just don't get?
I don't think the tracks get it, frankly. A lot of them, they know they have to have it, but they don't really know what they're buying. And there's a couple basics. Everybody's got to have general liability in case somebody gets hurt on their property. And then there's and I'm not talking about racers necessarily. I'm talking more so fans or employees or whatever. And then you've got to have participant accident, which is for anybody signing in the pits that's working on a car. And that's a secondary insurance. So if a driver gets hurt, it goes to their personal insurance first, then it goes to the racetrack, and then if there's a sanction involved, that would be third in line. But it goes to the personal stuff first, and it doesn't matter what series you're with. That's how it works.
So how has the insurance game changed from 2010 to now?
So just when I got involved in it, you could still get primary, or it was just kind of being phased out, but you could still get primary as a racer. So it would pick up from $1. So it has since changed. Now it's secondary. If the racer that gets hurt or the participant that gets hurt doesn't have insurance, then this does become primary and kicks in from $1. But the coverages are not very high. They're basically designed to just pay the deductible of your personal insurance. So, some tracks carry as little as 5,000. Some carry as much as 100,000. Most of the good ones are carrying 50. And again, it's just they're designed to pay a deductible. And most series that have additional insurance on top of it have a $50,000 deductible. So between your personal and the track, that's usually met. And then the race stuff kicks in, and before it gets to the sanction. And unless it's horrific, you can get away without paying anything out of pocket if you're a driver and it's not something that's horrific. Disability insurance, you can get, some states offer it, some states don't. It's kind of surprising it's not uniform. So I can sell a driver a policy in one state, but it's no good in another. So
No.
and also you have to prove that about 70% of your income is based on racing. So it's limited as to who you can sell it to. But there are some disability policies out there, because on a standard track policy, in most cases, if somebody gets hurt and they're going to be out for a month or something, there's no income. It's just medical insurance that's being paid. There's no income on a basic track policy.
So if a track comes to you, do you go to because I know I hear this a lot from fans when they look at a track, and let's say it's not as desirable as Lucas Oil Speedway or whatever. And they say, well, how do they get insured? Do you guys actually go to the track and look at it and tell them this, you can't do this, can't do that? Do you guys do that? Or is yours mostly with the driver, the coverage for the fans on the property, so on and so forth?
So K&K, we do tracks, but a big part of our business is race teams. But going back to your question, so my job, I'm a field underwriter. So my job is to go out and visit the facilities that we're writing. And, if everything's good, it's like once every 3 years, I visit them.
Okay.
If I see something that's kind of, we don't like, we write it up, and I kind of follow more closely on that. But a lot of it's based on loss history. So there may be a track that maybe doesn't have the best this or that, but hasn't had any issues. So they're somewhat flying clean, where a lot of your better tracks that have good stuff actually have a higher claims ratio because people actually go to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's more chance of something happening because they're well attended, or they're high speed. Half miles are actually a little worse, I suppose, in that regard. Because when it's a crash, it's usually more severe. But so it varies on loss history, the type of cars they're running, schedule, how many dates they're having, the amount of risk involved. We're all looking for cables and this and that. Some are cabled better than others, but there's some basic stuff that I have to look for when I go.
It seems like it really is a numbers game. If you have 40 races as opposed to 20 races, it's obviously gonna be, there's bigger chance at the one with 40 races and the speed and everything like that. So no, I totally understand that.
Yes, I mean, their premium is a lot of it's based on the schedule and prior losses and the types of cars they're running. And sprint cars are, if you're an all sprint car track, you're paying a higher premium than if you were an all modified or street stock track.
Now I know things have even changed for the media. Photographers especially can't go here, whereas 2 years ago, maybe you could go or stand in that section. Is that their mandate, or is just insurance changing so much all the time?
It's changing. It's changing. There are not as many players in the game. When I say that, I'm talking about the carriers. So K&K and most of our competition, we're just large agencies. We're relying on somebody's paper to back this up, and there just is not many insurance companies involved. There's only 4 or 5, and so you do not want to have a bad loss ratio, because you could struggle to find coverage, and if you find it, you're going to be paying a lot. So yeah. So going back to the photographers and such, I went through the Jacksonville, Illinois thing recently, and I was out to dinner with my wife, and this is like the 5th time it's happened where I'll get a call on a race night, and I know that track is racing that night. It's coming in at 8 o'clock or something. I know it's, right away, it's an automatic, it's not good.
Yeah.
But more often than not, it has been track workers and not participants that have been the injured. or the severely injured. And I think every track's got the guy, every track's got an opening where the cars exit or something. Every track's got that guy that thinks he can stand near there or in the opening and nothing's ever going to happen to him.
Yeah.
And in Pennsylvania, you've got a couple of them.
You don't have
kind of
yeah.
well known. And it's at some point, those workers are under the track ownership's direction, and they've got to crack down. And then the same thing with the photographers. A lot of them claim to be a business or whatever, but they don't have there's no workers' comp on them or anything. They're there, so they're relying on the track to cover them. And I think the tracks need to take, take a step to try and protect these guys that can't protect themselves. So I worked at the Chili Bowl for a lot of years, and they would hand out vests with numbers on them. And if they found a certain photographer outside the certain area, they would look up, okay, it's number 25 on the back of his vest. Boom, he's gone. 25 is gone, and he's not welcome back. So I think that's becoming more common now.
So off the insurance thing, so you could sweat that. You made it through.
Yeah.
Promoting. Okay, you've done a lot of it. Obviously, with the IRA, you've seen a lot of tracks. I see you at tracks. God, I've seen you in PA. I've seen you walk around the pit area, obviously at Eldora, Knoxville, so on and so forth. Since you started with IRA, what is the biggest change or difficulty you've seen in promoting, other than weather?
Well, the cost to the promoter. I think right now things are great for the racer, and maybe that's overdue. But the promoter, he's got those are some pretty big nuts to cover on some of these events, and I think we're pushing about to the limit right now, and without additional sponsorship, and not every promoter is a salesman, and myself probably included. Where we find enough to offset some of the cost. It's an expensive deal out there right now, for sure. I go to these other events. I'm always, even at 64, and I've been doing this, heck, I've been doing IRA for over 30 years now. I'm still wanting to learn. I enjoy seeing how other people do things. And in all honesty, the World of Outlaws have been great to me. I'm part of that sprint council. They include me in things, and they actually seem to care what the opinion is of us, a blue collar series like mine. They listen, and I think they've got to be somewhat careful. They don't want to go and become Formula One on the rest of the country. So I'm kind of, in a lot of cases, I think representing the small regional series or local track. And I learned a lot from going to these bigger events over the years, and I think applied as much to IRA as I can. We've got a pretty good infrastructure. We actually had a traveling safety crew before anybody else did. We've had one now for 20 years, and we've got fire suppression and stuff we bring with, because a lot of the places we go to, frankly, I don't know that they're totally up to speed on sprint cars and what it takes to put one out.
With the promoting end of it as well, I know here, I think just to open the gates is 13,000 to 17,000, and that's not including the purse.
Oh yeah, the purse is half of it, I would say. I'm a suitcase promoter. I don't own a track, so I still lease about 5 a year to put on IRA events, and some of which I have sponsors for, a lot of them I don't. So I know the costs, and I don't get the concessions. But let's go back to the rainout thing. Everybody's a lot of times they're on a promoter if he pulls too early. Sometimes, you got to consider, if you're bringing your staff in, now they're hourly employees, you have to start paying them. You got food. Do you take it out of the freezer? Do you start cooking it? And then it rains out in the hot laps. You got all this stuff made up or thawed out. Now it's no good. There's a lot of other things to consider other than just, can you get the race in from a track perspective? Can you get it rolled in? And now you've got the streaming. So, I don't really know for sure if it affects you on a rainy day, but I know the promoters think it does.
Oh, it
So,
does.
probably so, yes. I don't know how that's going to get addressed moving forward, if there's a way to do blackout zones or something. But I know I get beat up by the promoter on an iffy weather day that they run with it and they don't feel the crowd is what they think it should have been. That they definitely use that as an excuse, when a lot of times maybe they just should have pulled the plug. Yeah, I think you're seeing a lot more events get the plug pulled on them more early than in the past.
Yeah, I never question a track pulling it early. I mean, to me, if it's cloudy out and 60%, I'm done. But I look at it as a business. It's strictly a business. And I think promoters are forced, whether it's you or anybody else, you have to look at it more as a business than at any other time in this sport's history.
Oh, absolutely. More so than ever. Fully agreed. And the racers, I think, at the fuel costs, I think they appreciate it as well. And if it's a regional deal, let's say, we rain out a day early. Our racers can see what Mo is doing. They can see what Knoxville's doing. Run over to Butler, Michigan. For the ones that really want to race, there's places to go. Shoot over to Ohio. We're not that far away where guys can't do something else.
You know, the other thing is too with the streaming. Uh, how much of a moving target is that? How difficult is that to negotiate at this point? I mean, obviously you get a stipend from the streaming company. I get that. But still, it's still something that's relatively new. Do we just not know enough about it yet in your mind?
Well, I hear a lot of things, and I'm going to go back to the insurance thing a little bit. It's got nothing to do with insurance, but I talk to promoters all day long. So I hear, it might not even be a sprint car topic. It's just in general.
Right.
And I think they don't like the fact, some promoters don't like the fact that the series is the one cutting the deal. And it's, in many cases, there's nothing in it for the track. Or if that sanction body, they may, I kick back a little bit to the track, but I don't get paid a lot. So I can only kick back so much. And
Sure.
is it enough to cover the people that are staying home? No, it's not. But I'm giving them something. Some don't give them anything. I'm where I'm at, and I'm treated pretty well. We were doing a lot of co-sanction races with the All-Stars a few years ago.
Yeah.
We're flow, and it made sense at the time. And it's kind of, things have changed a little bit. I'm somewhat surrounded by dirt vision now, however, which doing scheduling is going to be something that's got to get figured out in the future. For example, Knoxville's dirt vision, Jacksonville, Illinois' dirt vision, Houston, Jackson, Minnesota. So a lot of those certain races, Fremont, Ohio at their dirt vision. So wanting to go to some other markets and co-sanction some other places, we're going to have to get involved and try and work all that out. I think it can be, because we're not that big of a player where it's, I don't think it's going to be an issue, but it could be.
Yeah, no, I agree. Beaver Dam this week announced that they're ceasing their weekly program at the end of 2024 and going to specials. I did a 90 at 9 on it. I get that they're running Tuesday. I understand. I've heard all the comments from people. Oh, it was MCA or modified stock cars. It's not sprint cars. So it's not as big a deal. And I'm like, no, I think this is a relative thing. Do you see from your travels talking to promoters that the weekly program is becoming obsolete? And we can go into the reasons in a minute.
In certain markets, yeah, a lot of them are struggling. If there's not, if a track doesn't have a lot of competition, I think those weekly markets are fine. But in Wisconsin there's probably 10 tracks running a very similar program. Beaver Dam wasn't always Tuesday. They were Saturdays for years and years and years. And we would rotate in there on an occasional Saturday. But their weekly program on Tuesdays was an IMCA based this year, maybe last year too. They were unsanctioned for quite a while, but there's just everybody else is running that same program. I love Beaver Dam. It's a great facility, and Scott Boyd, the owner of Beaver Dam, was one of my partners at SLS. And he's a business guy, and I think for the aggravation involved and the effort put forth, it just wasn't making enough money to continue to do it. I'm hoping, and I think IRA has positioned itself where we're still going to be there.
Sure.
I'm hoping multiple times, because we bring an infrastructure. We don't need any other employees on the track side to make it happen. So they can focus on selling tickets, concessions. Obviously they still have to prep it, but we can run the show. And I've got the 410s. I've got a crate 604 non-wing series. I've got lightning sprints. So IRA can come in with 3 divisions, and we don't need anything on our side. We even bring the safety guys. We can run our shows without any help. So we may be desirable in a situation like that. But there's a lot of places that are struggling on the weekly deal, and it's sad. There's just so many specials and so many series. Even in the sprint car thing, the Power I didn't have sprint cars a few years ago. Now they exist. Maverick didn't exist. You got one out. Heck, there's one out in the Dakotas now. I forget their name.
NOSA?
MSTS or something.
Yes.
Like that.
MSTS. Yes.
And those didn't exist. They're all 410s now. They don't have the infrastructure of an IRA, but it's becoming where, and that's just in sprint cars. So let's just take the same thing in late models or modifieds and all these different sanctions. In the Illinois area, you got Mars now, which is a takeoff of UMP. That have taken all the top modified drivers and made a series out of them, where those modified guys used to be the big star at the local track. So it's just a tougher deal now. It's the racers have options too, so it's harder. There's between myself, MOA, the Maverick thing, and occasionally Power I, we probably got 5 teams that we're all sharing cars with. And on certain nights we need those 5. We all need those 5. So it's a good thing for the racer, but it's tough on the racetrack.
Yeah, and those are just kind of regional series. Then you throw in High Limit, you throw in the World of Outlaws. Then it's even more of an issue. You said about the specials. It is great for the drivers that there's more money. There's no doubt that there's more money now, whether it's Maverick or another series like Power I or High Limit, for that matter. They have injected more money into the sport, but it does add another layer of difficulty for the promoter, because I can go buy a streaming service for $150 to watch all the local stuff, and then when the specials come around, which cost more money, I can use that money I save for the specials. And to the fan, they're spending the same as they always did.
Right. So there are times when I've got a promoter looking at me cross-eyed thinking, the streaming thing really hurt their night. I'll use an example. We were at Cedar Lake Speedway, and the weather was awful. We had 3 rain delays, probably should have been canceled. But we were there, and I commend them for going through with it. It's a long drive for most of us. Hell, it's over 6 hours for me, and they went through with it. But afterwards they're looking at me a little funny, and people weren't staying home to watch the IRA per se. The World 100 was on that night, and Cedar Lake's in a late model area. So we might have been something they were checking out when they were flipping, during intermission at the other track. I don't think there was that many people staying home just to watch us. I think most of our audience came from the 6 hours away, where our base is. But it's an issue. And I think there's a lot of series out there that aren't really a series. They're not, the High Limit thing forced everybody to raise their purses a little bit.
Yes.
The Outlaws had to raise theirs. Knoxville raised theirs. I did a little math on Knoxville. They added like $6,000 to their purse, and their purse was already great. But they're trying to keep, and I'm going to throw some names out here. I don't know this for fact, but like the Brian Browns and Austin McCarls, etc. They're trying to keep those guys at Knoxville, so they increase theirs. And I want to say Knoxville kicked their deal up like $6,000.
It was.
Well, at your basic ticket price, Knoxville ticket price, it's like they need 400 more people a night to cover that. I kicked mine up a couple grand, but I'm already at a ticket price that I don't think most tracks can increase. Most IRA shows are $25. We can't go any higher than that. I don't think. So that somehow that, we went up, let's say $2,500. Somehow that's getting absorbed. The racetrack's absorbing that, or they got to find additional sponsors or whatever, but everybody raised their deal. And some of these new series, God bless them, but how do you charge what the All-Stars were charging purse-wise to a promoter when you've only run a handful of races? It took the All-Stars, 40, 50 years to build to that, not a couple months. You know what I mean? So some of these things, it's a lot on the promoter, and I'm not sure how successful all these events necessarily are. I know what we can do, and because I self-promote some, I don't get the concessions. I know our numbers are something that I think are doable, but some of these others, I sometimes question.
Well, and the other, I was talking to some people yesterday about ticket price, and the ticket prices for dirt track racing are cheap when you compare them to other sports. I've covered other sports. I've covered the NFL. I've covered these other, stick and ball deals. And even a high school game, if you go to a high school game, it's up to $8-10 for $15 more. You can go to a pretty decent dirt track show. I mean, Lincoln's $20. Williams Grove on a regular show is like 18 to 20. Have dirt track fans had it good for a long time? And now we're getting, and I'm not degrading that, but it has been very affordable in the entertainment landscape. And now when it needs to increase because of just the environment or the ecosystem, fans push back.
I sometimes wonder about the casual fan, not so much the diehard. I think the diehards get it. But we'll take, so World of Outlaws were at Wilmot recently.
Yes.
A ticket, I want to say a grandstand ticket, and I might be off on this, but I want to say it was like $49.
Oh,
there's 2 nights of that. Well, okay, we'll go back to, I heard your sigh. I'll give you an example. So when the Outlaws had to raise their purse because the high limits raised theirs, so I think the Outlaw thing increased $11,000 to the promoter. Well,
yeah, something like that in that
it's
neighborhood.
getting passed on. In some cases, the promoter's not taking a hit on that. It's getting passed on to the fan.
Yes.
So, I would say if you were a Wilmot running a weekly show the week before, and certainly the week after, the money's out of the neighborhood. People saved up for those. I don't know. It's the casual fan. So in Wisconsin, there's a lot going on. I mean, this weekend you got the NASCAR trucks. I think ARCA's there. The next week we got Indy cars there at the Milwaukee Mile, and we're trying to run sprint car stuff against this. A couple weeks ago, I did a combination at Plymouth, Wisconsin. Heck, I even forget the second race. But it was a two-day swim. Oh, Dodge County. I did Dodge County. I should know because I promoted both of those. But I was up against EAA Air Show, which is like one of the largest air shows in the country, at Oshkosh, which is right in the market. And then I had Harley Davidson Fest in Milwaukee going on, and numerous concerts and other stuff. And you're trying to compete with that. You're also trying to compete with that in advertising. So the advertising rates are jacked up. Hotels in the area were jacked up. I had some teams that weren't IRA regulars that would typically come in for that weekend, but at $350 a hotel room, they're not coming. Right. So there's just a lot of other stuff going on too. It's not just racing, but our ticket prices have been, I'm somewhat blessed. IRA is the only 410 deal, in Wisconsin and Northern Illinois. So, we are kind of like the circus coming to town. We've been getting away with a $25 ticket, and that's kind of where it needs to be honest with you. So us did a couple support classes to stand it, to make a little bit of money. That's what you need to be, because the promoter's taking a little bit of a risk on us versus a regular weekly thing, because his costs aren't that high. They're probably paying $10,000 in purse on a weekly show. And even with us and a couple support classes, it's probably low 30s. So we're tripling, but we're not tripling the ticket price. We're probably doubling the ticket price, but we're not tripling. But the costs are triple. But we're getting more volume, obviously. But you got to hope for the weather, and there's a lot to it. There's just a lot more in the larger markets, especially. There's just a lot more for the fan to do.
Yeah, I mean, in central Pennsylvania, we just have so many races. It's like 115 races through
I don't. That just puts me in awe, even from the team perspective. I can't even imagine how many engines or engine freshenings that takes. And heck,
Yeah.
a freshening nowadays damn near costs what an engine did when I started. I remember we had a pretty stout motor. We paid like 15 grand, back in the day, and now that's a freshening.
And
That
that's
15
what,
grand motor, by the way. So we actually had the motor came out of our family garage when I was a kid that was in Scott Cowman's 02 car that Mike Ranke drove, and that held the Knoxville track record. We set the track record with that car and motor out of my dad's garage. I think that thing cost 15 grand.
yeah,
15 grand.
it
And
was,
eventually it was beat by Mark Kinzer in the Mopar, beat that track record. I think that was set in, I forget what year. That was 92 or 96. I'm kind of getting my years. I'm getting older. That's one of
that
the
was,
problems with getting old, and I'm getting confused on my years a little bit.
the Mopar car was late. It was probably 96, somewhere in there.
Okay, so we'll go with 96 on that track record then. And it's pretty cool because those guys are friends of mine, and Mike Ranke still runs IRA stuff occasionally, and Scott Cummins, actually, he owns the car that Dylan Cisney drives
Correct.
in PA. But they were kind enough to give me the nose wing off that car and stuff. So I've got that hanging in my office at home and stuff. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, Pennsylvania, I say there's too many races. To me, every track should run 20, then put a monster truck show, fair, whatever. Because you got to bring in new people too. The diehards, they are dying hard. that's kind of how that is, and not to be morbid, but that's just the way it is. I mean, I think our average fan base is, I think their average age is what, 50? Do you think 52, somewhere in there?
Probably. I am a little encouraged, I guess. We've got a pretty good young staff. A lot of our staff at IRA is younger, and they're bringing their friends, and I'm starting to see a little encouragement there. I think sprint cars have gotten a little more mainstream, and in recent years, and I think that's helping. But I think the non-wing fan is a little older than a wing fan in most cases.
That's fair.
But yeah, it's a challenge for sure to create new ones. There's just so many other things to do.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point. We're encouraged because streaming has added exposure, whatever that means. But there's more people watching it. I think there's more eyes on it. But then you have some of the other problems, and it's finding that balance. As a promoter, how do you find that balance? What is your suggestion at this point?
I don't. If I knew the answer, I'd be promoting a lot more races than just 5. I don't know. I think a lot of us and a lot of track owners all fall in the same deal. We get so busy that we're leaving money on the table. I didn't have a sponsor for any of my races this year, and it's not that I got turned down. I haven't even had the time to look.
Right.
I got a big one coming up at the end of the season in Wisconsin where it's IRA 410, it's my wingless, it's my lightning sprint, and it's the MSA 360s all combined in the same night. It's championship night for all of us. So that's been a good show for me. But if any race should have a sponsor attached to it, it's that one. And I'm going to reach out now. It's only a month away. It's September 28th, and I haven't even started looking for a sponsor. But that's something that they're out there. You just got to have the time to look. And I think so many guys, if you don't have that stuff done over the winter and your season starts, and you're a Pennsylvania track running 40 nights a year,
Yeah.
and when do you have time to even think about this stuff? It's just hard, and a lot of these places, I'll go back to the K&K thing for a minute. So a lot of the people I call on that are track operators and owners, they have other businesses that subsidize the racetrack. So they have very small staffs in many cases, and they just don't have that person that's out there, pounding the streets. It's sad, but I'm finding I'm no different. I'm no different.
No, and it's difficult for racetracks, I think, all the way around. Back when you were growing up in this sport, did you ever imagine you'd have your fingers in this much stuff?
No, it's pretty amazing actually. So I'm pretty much racing 24/7, much to my wife's frustration. But uh, yeah, it's amazing. I've met some wonderful people. I mean, I don't even know if you know this, but so last year when Tony Stewart had that SRX deal
Yeah,
going on, I was the race director for SRX. So add that to the mix, and you think that's only 6 races. It's not a big deal. That 6 races is 18 days because you had to travel in the night before, you ran the event, and you had to travel home the next day.
right.
So that's taking up 3 days a week in the middle of the season. So in my 30, whatever this is, I started IRA in 93 when I took it over. I have only missed 3 races in that entire time. One of which was when my first son was born. Second of which, I had a heart attack. Imagine that. And and Eric Walls from the All Stars actually came and filled in for me. That was just a couple of years ago. And then I missed one because my SRX flight got messed up. We were racing at Stafford in Connecticut, and IRA was in Minnesota last year, and my flight got messed up. So I missed 3 races total in that whole span. Which yeah, but I love it. I love when the bigger shows come to town, and I used to, well, I don't go as much as I used to, but I never would miss, including, other, doesn't have to be a sprint car. If something was the Milwaukee Mile and Bob Sargent was promoting it as an example, yeah, I always feel there's something I can learn. In all these RPM workshops, I've been to every one for the last 20 years. And you always pick up on something. It's just, can you apply it to what you're doing? A lot of things I do, a lot of things I hear great ideas. I just don't have the time to get it done. But I think you can always learn something at 64, and I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to still do this, but I'm still learning. And I still enjoy walking the pits at Knoxville and going to the meetings and talking to other promoters and see what works and what doesn't work. I enjoy that. And because of the K&K thing, I get to go to a lot of these. The state of Wisconsin has a promoters association. I'm actually the vice president of it. And we get together twice a year. And we
Oh, it's
got that idea.
fantastic.
Oh yeah, we got that idea from the state of Michigan. So Ron Drager, who's a longtime owner of ARCA, which has now been bought by NASCAR, but Ron still runs the deal. He also owns Flat Rock Speedway in Michigan and Toledo Speedway. And 2 different things. Flat Rock's a weekly track, Toledo specials only, but being the Flat Rocks in Michigan, just outside Detroit, he heads up the Michigan Promoters Association. And that is called MSPA. In both the Michigan and the Wisconsin meetings, we probably get more tracks should attend, but I bet you we get close to 20, pavement, dirt mix. And a lot of us doesn't matter if you're just a dirt track, you're fighting the same problem, in a lot of cases. And then Michigan does a really cool thing. At the end of the meeting, the dirt tracks split off on one side and the pavement tracks go another way. And they can be talking about tires or upcoming contracts or schedules or whatever it may be. But I think it's great. And I love going to those things and hearing other people's perspectives. So I got a pretty neat gig. I wish I had more time.
Do you want to come to Pennsylvania? Since you don't have enough to do you want to come to Pennsylvania and maybe get our promoters because they don't ever meet?
Well, yeah, I think it's some of those trade shows or car shows in the off season. I went to one a couple of years ago. The folks from BAPS invited me.
Yes, racing extravaganza.
Yeah. So I went to that, and I think opportunity presents itself even on a smaller level at things like that. If you can get on the same page, I know everybody at that's already handing out their schedules, but if there was a way to pull that stuff together in the fall and get guys together so they're not stepping on each other, I think would be great. Or from a rules perspective, certainly, everybody needs to be on the same page on the rules. That is one thing I'm very proud of on the 410 side. nationally, a car can pretty much go anywhere.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of tech done on somebody's and some series, and you get much below me. It's sad to say, but I don't think there's much tech going on. Not criticizing Ohio Speed Week, but I heard they didn't even have scales there. So I don't know if that's true. That's kind of sad, but I think you got to have a little bit of an infrastructure and give guys a reason why they want to race with you. But getting together is important. I actually love those meetings. I get a lot out of them.
Well, and just was in Wisconsin. I know it's an outlaw, and might put you on the spot here. It's an outlaw stronghold. And we all know high limit. First off, I'm under the belief, before I get to that 2-series national series can work. That's my belief. Only because I think the teams that run them are looking for different things. Like Brent Marks is not running outlaws. He wants time off. He doesn't want to run 80 races, even though the outlaws never get to 80 races because of rainouts. But do you believe, if you can say that 2 national series can coexist for an extended period of time?
If scheduled accordingly, or appropriately, I don't think it's good. I mean, I look at let's look at the California guys right now, and what could happen in the spring too. I mean, they might as well might as well not even race this fall. I mean, if they even, in the climates they're in, they can probably go till November. But with both traveling national series going to be out there the next several weeks, their guys are going to be wore out, whether it be, out of engines or out of this or out of that. So NARC might as well just sit down. And I just think you just got to be careful with that in your Pennsylvanias, your Ohios, and even your Wisconsins. World of Outlaws come out for 3 2-day shows that we sit down for in the height of the summer. And, so my guys, it's kind of funny. So they'll try to figure out how many guys are going to these shows. So if there's, they'll try and find out, okay, there's, whatever, 14, 15 outlaws, and there's 5 other guys coming in that are on the outlaw tow money for that weekend. How many spots are available for us to make the main?
Yeah.
And we're not getting the 40-car fields we used to get, because guys it's all about the money now. And they may even take the outlaws might be in our backyard. You might see a couple guys go to Knoxville that week just because they think it's easier to make money there than not make it locally, and especially not make it in front of their fans. So I don't know. And a lot of them just stay home and walk around the pits and learn things too. I see a lot of that. I don't know. I don't want to get into it too much, but in Wisconsin, I think part of the problem was trying to keep the dates far enough away from each other. And there was no willingness to do that. And I think that hurt. And you got to remember too, the World of Outlaws also have late models. And Wisconsin's a big late model state, especially the Northwest side. And it gets political for sure. And it's kind of where we're at there. But I think if scheduled appropriately, and it depends what else is in that market, but I mean, I know I don't want to be sitting down more than 3 weekends in the summer already. So between June and July, there's 3 weekends the Outlaws are in town or in my state for 2-day shows. I like they're coming to Joliet, Illinois in October. I like that. We're done. You know what I mean? No conflict, but there's a lot of these bigger shows, that we had really big success with that. We combined with that Maverick deal in Indiana. That was when Houston's was going to run the 250K race, and it ended up getting flooded out. But, Knoxville sat for that. Everybody to my west sat. USAC was in Wisconsin. So us going to Indiana, it was just a perfect time. And Maverick doesn't really have a base yet, but that just showed you how many cars are willing to do something. And I was, we had 4 days at 90-some degree heat. Crowds could have been better. I think two were okay, but we also had a a forecast that was 2 weeks out that said it was going to be mid-90s, and it didn't disappoint. It was every bit of that. It was miserable.
Car count
But
was good.
but some of the racing was great. The teams, I got to meet some new teams, and IRA actually picked a couple cars up from it, on occasion, because they enjoyed themselves and they felt they were treated well and they liked the way things ran. So that's a positive. And that was my main reason for going. I insure a lot of those tracks in Indiana, yet they really haven't been much of a wing thing. And I think the Maverick concept is good, but they don't have a lot of infrastructure yet. So I thought we could bring something to the table, and it wouldn't cost them really anything to have us, because again, there's a new series that our purses are already higher than ours, and we've been around for 50 years.
Yeah.
And sometimes I wonder if it's too much too soon. But regardless, it was good it worked out well. So I gave us some tracks that were bucket list tracks for some of the guys, and we got to do them, and we'll see where that goes in the future.
So you look good. You're 64. You might have talked to your wife about this one. How long do you do this? How long do you keep your fingers in so many pies, or do you just kind of scale back here or there and do, let's say, just IRA or just the insurance gig? Or how do you gauge that? Have you thought about that?
I'm wondering if she can hear this right now. I think she might be able to be. This is a perfect example. Here I am sitting in Florida right now, where years ago this wouldn't have happened. I would have filled the date, no doubt. So I'm looking for some time off, and I took some of those outlaw weekends where the guys came in. I only went to the outlaw show one night instead of two. So trying to do some other stuff. I got some kids they're doing neat stuff. I got a 29-year-old drummer. That's what he does for a living. He drums. He tours all over the place, and when he's local, I like to be his roadie per se. I got another one that plays golf every day. I like to go do that with him, and I like to start doing more of that. The insurance thing, they're very good to me. K&K is very good to me, and they allow me to set my travel schedule that fits me. And so when I'm doing Wisconsin, for example, if I'm going to an IRA race in Plymouth, Wisconsin, I'll hit 3 other tracks on the way there and the way home and do my K&K thing on the way. So it works out. It works out well. We're going to Superior and Cedar Lake, which is the northwest part of the state. I'll stop at Rice Lake and Ashland and a couple other places, so that I tie that in. So that works good. I've got a really good guy. His family's been with the IRA forever. Dakota Tennyson works for my Race Pass. So during the week, he teaches people how to score, and he's my scorer. And I think they probably, and when I had that SRX plane debacle, he ran the deal, and I've got a great staff and I've got a big staff, so they can do it without me if they need to. It's me, I'm a control freak, and it's hard. I could probably let go a little easier than I should let these guys have a few, and that's probably where it's going. I don't see myself walking away completely, but maybe cutting back a little bit. The insurance thing is good. I'll continue to do that. I don't know. I'm not giving up anything yet, but you might not see me at every race. But the Knoxville thing and stuff, I love that. They allow me to participate in that. I'm up in the tower. Hell, this year it was, the World of Outlaws have a new guy because Mike Hess went to High Limits. So Doug was their competition director, and Doug he only been to Knoxville one time prior and never been to the Nationals. So, they pretty much just have me sit up there next to him and be a second set of eyes or help him with anything that he may not be accustomed to. And the rules are a little different. So maybe it's kind of a combo Knoxville World of Outlaw rules package. So I'm kind of sitting up there representing Knoxville, I guess, in a sense. But I enjoy doing that, and I don't see myself stopping doing those kind of things. But out of a 35 race IRA schedule, maybe you'll see me at 25 in the future. I'm not saying that's next year, but it's coming at some point.
Well, I'll peek outside the door and see if she's standing there.
I hear her on the phone, so that's a good thing. But I don't. She's good, and she allows me to do this. And hell, half the time it's funny on our calendar at home. If it's a race day, I'll just put R. are on the thing. She doesn't even know what state I'm in. It's actually kind of comical. I could not wake up one morning. She wouldn't even know what track I was at the night before. But it all works, and it's been good. But there are some things that I do owe. She wants to go on a couple trips that I've been putting off, and they're trips that have to be made in the summertime. So maybe that's a deal where when the Outlaws come to town, maybe that's a weekend I take off and go do that. Maybe we do that stuff more often.
That's good. The barter system. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, thank you very much for joining us on the show. Thank you for taking time out. I know you're in Florida, kind of doing a little bit of R&R as much as you can. And again, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate what you do for the sport. It's a great opportunity, and I appreciate having the chance to be on. Thank you.
Thank you. That's going to wrap up this edition of the SprintCarUnlimited.com Deep Dive presented by EnTrust IT Solutions. Thank you to Steve Sinclair for joining us on the show. A lot of good stuff there, very insightful. And also, don't forget to click the subscribe button on our YouTube channel and check out our daily exclusive content at www.sprintcarunlimited.com. We'll be back next week with another edition of the Deep Dive.